This was the clinical trial in patients with relapsed myeloma. There were 117 patients enrolled and who either received elotuzumab, lenalidomide, dexamethasone, elotuzumab, pomalidomide, dexamethasone versus pomalidomide, dexamethasone. And so these were patients who were already, or whose myeloma was already, refractory to bortezomib and lenalidomide. So they were often refractory to the first generation of the two agents. That's important because this elotuzumab pomalidomide dexamethasone, when compared to pomalidomide dexamethasone alone, really was remarkably better. The progression-free survival with elotuzumab pomalidomide dex was 10.3 months versus 4.7 months for the pomalidomide dexamethasone alone. And the complications or adverse events were actually indicating that the addition of elotuzumab to the pomalidomide dex did not really markedly increase this adverse profile. Importantly, the hazard ratio was 0.54, which means that there was a 46% decrease or risk of progressing to myeloma or death by virtue of adding elotuzumab to pomalidomide dex. So this particular clinical trial in patients who were primarily in North America would be refractory to lenalidomide and bortezomib treatment now offers us an FDA-approved regimen for relapsed disease incorporating the novel monoclonal antibody elotuzumab. So I think it offers us a wonderful new opportunity to treat our patients.
The ELOQUENT-3 trial was a trial comparing PomDex, pomalidomide dexamethasone, with pomalidomide dex with elotuzumab. Now, this combination, very safe, very well tolerated. ELO as a monoclonal antibody is an extremely well tolerated drug. The benefit of adding elotuzumab to the backbone of PomDex is actually incredible because it doubles the response rates and doubles the progression-free survival rate, which is incredible. I would not have expected to see that. So it's a great combining partner, and it really does not impact the toxicity of the PomDex combination. Really, if you look at the data of the ELOQUENT-3, looking at PomDex versus PomDex ELO, and if you didn't know which arm was which, you were not going to be able to see a big difference in terms of toxicity. So I think with elotuzumab, most of us would agree there's no toxicity issue. The issue is how durable are the responses that you see with the addition of elotuzumab, given that ELO as a single agent doesn't have a whole lot of activity in myeloma. The ELOQUENT trial again included all kinds, and in fact, I think the nice thing about the ELOQUENT trial is it's one of those trials where they had a lot of patients who were Rev exposed or Rev refractory. And again, it begs to that same question that we were discussing earlier on. If you've had an IMiD before, can you have an IMiD again? And the answer to that, based on the ELOQUENT trial, as well as the Optimism trial, which is PomDex with bortezomib, is that you can use a POM-based or POM-containing regimen even if you're refractory to lenalidomide. Now, the addition of elotuzumab was beneficial in all subgroups, including in high-risk genetics, as well as all ages, and that largely speaks to the fact, all ages specifically, because it does not compound toxicity, which is really an important part of adding elotuzumab to the PomDex backbone. We tend to use pomalidomide a lot earlier, so most of my patients will see pomalidomide at their first or their second relapse. We are not using it for very refractory patients, and that's largely because, you know, in the upfront setting we are using combinations. The majority of them are on a len-containing regimen, so their next regimen is POM. Now, what I use for the partner with POM depends on the kind of relapse and the kind of toxicity profile from their previous treatment. If they have neuropathy, I'm not going to use bortezomib. I would use elotuzumab in that setting. If they've had, if they don't want to come in for once a week treatment with carfilzomib, again, I would pick elotuzumab in that setting. But I tend to use a POM-based regimen in the first relapse or second relapse, and depending on the kind of relapse, I would be very comfortable using elotuzumab in that combination.